Channel read Novel Chapter 1541 Peaceful Dalki. The new ship traveled faster than the usual medium-sized vessels, which meant they wasted next to no time getting to the Dalki main ship's location, the place which their enemy called home. Looking out the window, they could see it did really look like a small planet. What was most interesting about it wasn't just the shape of the thing, but the fact that it was made up of several different terrains. It was a spaceship that the Dalki had made using all of the other beast planets. When I look at this, I feel a bit sad for the Dalki, Logan said as they slowed down upon approaching the place. They turned the ship's camouflage system on as they slowly came to the planet, lowering the probability of alerting the enemy. Logan had backed every bit of his family's technology in his own knowledge, including Richard's, to create this ship. After completing the trials, everyone was left with a weapon to help them in this battle. Although it might have seemed like the reward was the nest crystal, to Logan, he felt more like it was the knowledge left behind by Richard for someone to take his place in all of this. What do you mean? The Dalki are trying to kill us, why would you feel sad for them? Fex asked. No offense, Borden. He felt like he needed to mention since Borden was also a Dalki. Just think about it, can't you? The Dalki were created by vampires, but that place never felt like home to them. Earth is a place they hadn't been to before, so what did they do? Looking at this, it feels almost as if they tried to create their own home. That still doesn't change the fact that they are trying to kill us, again, no offense, Borden, Fex added once again. It makes me wonder, why doesn't Borden want to kill us? Borden asked. I mean, he's just like the Dalki and the humanoid Dalki that we have encountered. Borden placed his finger on his chin as he thought about the answer himself. I don't even know the answer to that one. He finally replied. When I first was born, I just wanted to find you, brother, but I do have an urge to keep fighting, but that goes for all creatures, not just humans. Still, I can suppress it. It was my first time. Logan suddenly said, which made the others strangely look at Logan, waiting for him to explain himself. I think Borden mixing in with so little of the beast DNA compensated for using most of your structure, Borden, or Syl structure, to be precise. Honestly, there are some things that even I can't explain with science. For instance, at the time, the mind that was occupying Syl's body was yours, Borden, and the personality that Borden represents most out of all three of you is yours. In fact, I can say that he nearly doesn't have a trace of the other two. Yet, the body always had and always belonged to Syl. Honestly, it might just be that Borden's nature is so good that it overcomes any Dalki desires, or just like any creation, when mixing a set of genes together and mashing things up, no person or Dalki, I should say in this instance, is the same. Let's think of Borden as a mutation. In fact, if we could study Borden more, we could try to find out what makes him different from the rest. When we know this factor, we could try changing the Dalki. However, to even try to do something like that, even if we did find a solution, we would have to capture them and modify them. Imagine trying to do that when we are already fighting for our lives. Logan explained, speaking of which, little Borden said. I only have one injection left. I know you made a lot for me when we had the demon tier beast, but I was wondering if you had any more. Unfortunately, that is the last one. The demon tier beast that Quinn has cannot be used anymore. Perhaps if we are successful in our goal or find something in their lab, we can do something. The ship was ready to land in a forest-like region as the conversation ended. It looked for the most open area and scanned for any traces of life, but there weren't any signs of life on this side of the planet. After crushing a few trees, the ship landed, and everyone descended from the ship. Looking back, they could see that the ship was practically invisible. It was amazing, and with the trees, it was nearly impossible to find it. Although one could still touch it, and if touched, a ripple around the ship would reveal its location. Don't worry, the ship is linked to inform me if it reads any signs of life coming within its range, Logan explained. However, we have a long walk in front of us. All of the Dalki, just like the forces before, are focused on one location. I think it might have been that large black tower. I mean, that has to be a dead giveaway that something is there, right? Fex commented. The rest nodded at this, and soon, it was time for them all to make their way over there. The group walked through the forest-like territory for a while, and up ahead, they noticed the surface changing into a strange hard black substance ground. Before we engage in combat, I would like to ask everyone a favor. Logan started to speak, following something on his wristwatch. He was seemingly looking at something, but the others couldn't really see. The Dalki have a lab here, and I would like to gather as much information from them as possible. So let's try to get all the Dalki out of the area. Deal with the Dalki first, and then try to handle the demon tier beast. In fact, if we deal with all the Dalki here, then maybe we can just leave the demon tier beast captive. They are sure to have it locked up somewhere. Logan asked. Why would you want to get information from the Dalki? We will be getting rid of them all away. Jake said, and then received a look from Small Borden, who was riding on Borden's shoulder. Sorry little guy, I keep forgetting. Destroying knowledge is something we must not do because it can help us in the future. Besides, you guys keep talking about how strong you were. If it's true, then these forces should be easy for you. Huh, that sounds great. Rattan stated, punching his fists together. Alright, then why don't we all have a friendly competition? Who can deal with the most Dalki while on here? I mean, I would win anyway, but maybe I should use one hand to give you guys an advantage. Usually, the others weren't so much into competitions, especially with how serious the situation was, but Rattan always managed to annoy them somehow. Are you so sure about that, Rattan? Is Syl included in this as well? Borden asked. Haha, I have a big advantage if that's the case. Peter said with his lesser whites walking by his side. What is wrong with you guys? Layla suddenly spoke up. Linda had been quiet all along as well. She was still affected by what happened in battle with One Horn, but she knew this conversation was just a way how the others were dealing with the pressure of the situation. For Layla, it was different. This is dangerous, we could all die, people are dying now, and there are even those attacking the vampire settlement. Once they're done there, they will go for the other planets, and here you are taking all this as a game. There was silence from most of them until Peter broke the ice. Calm down, are you on your period or something? Peter replied. Just because we know your weak arse isn't going to win, no need to complain about our fun. Stop spoiling it for us. At that moment, Peter's voice trailed off, and everyone paused and glanced at each other, because coming out from behind a rock, was Dalki. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1542 Creating a Big Bang. The reason why most of them had glanced at each other was that they thought that seeing the first Dalki was the sign for their little competition to start. They all looked at the Dalki like it was some prey, and at the same time, when it saw them, it opened its mouth wide, as if it was ready to attack. The Dalki aren't the type of beings to run away in the first place, and it wasn't as if they knew or bothered learning the faces of the humans that they needed to be scared of. The first one's mine. Peter shouted, almost charging forward, but before anyone else had moved. There was already someone faster than him and had punched Dalki in the chest. The fist pushed through the Dalki's chest, and it died without knowing what had hit him. So you decided to go for a speed ability once again? Fex questioned. Damn, I really thought that you might have picked stronger abilities in case you went up against Graham. Since you know they didn't work last time, why didn't you pick some other abilities? This ability saves lives, Syl replied and went back to walk with the rest. Also, that's 1 point to me. Honestly, Fex was just complaining because he knew with all of these monsters in this group, he stood next to no chance of ever winning the competition. He just wasn't even in the same league, even though they would often call him on these events because he knew the cursed people well, and his strong ability came in handy a lot. It made him think if his ability was something else, would they even consider inviting him along? Still, Syl did think Fex had a point because it wasn't enough to beat Graham if they ran into him with the current set of abilities. The competition is a good idea. My abilities won't last for a long time, so we should get a move on. Syl reminded them. Agreed, Logan said. Since we have already encountered the first Dalki, we must be close to the main base. The group was treading lightly with their destination, the huge black tower, now in reach. Nate didn't know how to use shadow travel, but he succeeded in spreading out his shadow on the ground, making their footsteps almost silent as they continued to walk. Once again, the terrain changed, and now it looks more like a jungle. The ground was still black underneath, but there were plenty of trees, which was perfect for the group to conceal themselves. The others had spotted a few more Dalki, but raising his hand, Logan stopped others from going after them, at least until they were aware of the whole situation. I can hear something. It sounds like a ship's engine. Jake said. Trusting the vampire's leader's ears, they decided to follow the direction of the sound and soon reached what looked like a launching pad, but not just any type, it was one where all the Dalki motherships that they had seen were. There were several ships here, around 4 of them landed at present, and the sound of other Dalki making more, but not just Dalki, they also noticed the presence of vampires, and surprisingly, all of them looked the same. What the F***CK? Nate almost shouted, but it just turned into a loud whisper. That's Jim. That's all those clones from that island, do you remember? Come on, you guys, you have to remember. The others knew all right. Just because the original might be dead doesn't mean they can't stop creating clones, Logan said. Wait a minute, why can't they clone Dalki then? Like they do the vampires. Can't they use those new nest crystals you found? Nate asked. Logan shook his head. I think it's something to do with a demon tier beast's energy. In the first place, a nest crystal can't produce a demon tier beast, and how they actually exist is something unknown. Perhaps a beast keeps evolving. An unnatural occurrence, but the beast made by a nest crystal is never that powerful to start with. Since the Dalki have the demon tier energy in them, it's impossible to replicate. Anyway, speaking of the demon tier beast, the reading seems to be coming from behind them, and if I am not wrong, the structure which I am sure we can all see is the lab we were discussing earlier. Indeed, the others noticed the lab too, it wasn't too far away. The other reading, although there are a lot of Dalki here, most of the energy sources are coming from closer to where that tower is, Logan explained. The tower wasn't too far off from where they were, and they could see it too, but it was perhaps a kilometer over in the other direction. Now the question was, what was the group to do? I have an idea. I know before we left the ship, we agreed it wasn't a good idea for us to split up. Logan said. But in this case, it might be. You guys still want to have your competition, right? Then my suggestion is that the Blades, along with Nate and Fex, except for Borden, head towards the tower. He comes with us, and Linda and Layla will stay with me. You guys, I want you to make as big a bang as possible, and if there is any trouble at all, notify us immediately. If you can handle it, then go crazy. If you can't, we will come up with another plan. Honestly, if you guys can't handle it, I doubt we would be able to as well, which is why we need another plan to get rid of the demon tier beast. The other group will head inside the lab. While saying this, he gave little Borden a wink. There was another reason he wanted to head there inside with Borden. To see if there was anything they could do about his state. According to Quinn, he had seen the technology they had, and if Jin's clone was still here, he felt confident he would find something that would help little Borden no longer be little anymore. The others seemed to agree somewhat, apart from Fex, who wanted to go along with the girls, but both groups were already moving their own ways, leaving Fex just to shake his head. I wish I was with Samantha, anyway, I just need to get through this, and then I can spend the rest of my time with her. It didn't take long for Nate and the others to reach the front of the Black Tower, but they noticed something strange. While making their way there, they noticed that in front of the base was the ground caved inward, and there were several cracks in it as well. Eventually, they realized it wasn't natural for the land to be that way, what they were in was an enormous crater. At first, they thought it was just part of the land layout, but now that they were by the edge that only just reached the black tower, they could tell it was a crater. Is that just me, or does that look like someone bombed the ground, or maybe, punched it? Nate asked. It certainly looked to be the case. Does that mean, whatever created that is here? Fex asked. Running out, Syl was first. He stood there, and a group of Dalki guarding outside the strange tower had spotted him. Either way, we will have to face whatever created that crater if they are here or not. We have to try and stop him. We can't just rely on Quinn all the time. Syl said as he picked up a stone and threw it towards the Dalki. The stone went through the Dalki's head in the next moment, killing it instantly. The others readied themselves as it sounded like more were soon coming. Back where Logan and the others were, they were patiently waiting a few seconds later, and they could hear constant explosions go off in the distance, not too far away. The Dalki and the clones, noticing this, started to rush over while a few had stayed behind. Looks like they are causing quite the commotion over there. Let's go. Logan said. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1543. Inside the Dalki base around Logan's left arm, there was a constant robotic casing. For the most part, this was because he covered up what his Dalki arm looked like. It didn't look too out of place for Logan because his whole suit was made up of strange nanomachinery, which he could break down to create different suits or use for unique circumstances like the current one. The good thing was, Logan always had a set of supplies with him, and he had somewhat predicted that there would be vampires at the Dalki main base. One of his guesses was that Jim would be here, though he wasn't considering encountering this many. Still, because of this, he had prepared a special spray with him that allowed him to blend in with other vampires. They would be picking up his special scent, and thus, he also sprayed it on Borden and Layla for safe measure. Subclasses carried a different and detectable scent, and as for Borden, Logan honestly had no idea, but there was no need to take risks. They were using the special spiders, and thanks to the big distraction in the opposite direction, they managed to reach the special lab without any trouble. They had the perfect team with them. The spiders could spot hallways and more, alerting them if anyone came their way. As for little Borden, at a glance, most would choose to ignore him, so help the team get through small places. Then there was Layla. Currently, the group had made it into the main lab and the locked doors weren't a problem for Logan with his powers. The only one who felt somewhat useless was Linda, but she was ready to help whenever needed. We need to get to this lab server room or something similar. Although it might not have the information we need, it should have the layout of this place. Logan explained. His spiders were busy searching the place, and they could see two Dalki coming their way down one of the hallways. They were in somewhat of a rush. Raising her hand, Layla started to float up a few rocks she had picked up from the outside. She slowly moved it past their feet on the ground and then flung it as fast as she could, hitting the wall of that hallway in the opposite direction. Did you hear that? Let's go, we need to check it out. I heard the attackers are humans, but there are only a few of them, there could be more. The Dalki said as they rushed over. Logan realized on this mission that the Dalki weren't exactly the brightest, and as they went around the place, they also noticed that all the vampire clones were being treated like slaves. They were being pushed around without any regard and respect and were silenced whenever they tried to say anything. How the situation came to be would certainly be an interesting one, but first, Logan had another job to finish. Heading into one of the rooms by the hallway, the team found themselves in some type of storage room. It had a mixture of chemicals in glass bottles, melted crystals and more. Judging by this, we should be close. Instead of walking around and getting caught, I should wait for my spiders to do the job. We are in a good enough location right now. Thinking about this, Logan began to guide the spiders to start the search, and it didn't take long for Logan to find what he was looking for. It wasn't the lab but a server room. That place might give them some basic information about where the Dragon and Graham's lab was. How are my brothers and the others doing? Borden asked. They don't seem to be in trouble. I haven't gotten an update from them, but they said they would contact me only if there was some trouble. I am more concerned about trying to pinpoint the location of the demon tier beast. The device that we were using before is getting readings from all over the place. My guess is they are using the demon tier energy for several things, which is messing with the readings. Logan replied. Using the same tactic that they had done before, they made their way to the server room. It was almost left unguarded, and honestly, Logan was quite surprised how few Dalki there were in the whole lab. Have they already consumed all of the beast's energy, or perhaps was Sam right in thinking that Graham is overconfident? Placing his hand on the server, Logan was ready to get whatever information he needed. As expected, the servers linked to the demon tier beast weren't here, and the same for Graham's lab, but it did reveal their location. Unfortunately, the two of them were in opposite places in the lab. With the main center in the way, they will have to decide which one to go to first. While looking through the server information, although it said nothing about the demon tier beast or Graham's research, it did have some other information. A breakout? Logan thought. Looking into it a bit more, he had just uncovered some shocking information. It said here that there was an ability user here, who, along with True Dream, had escaped from this place. So True Dream really was alive after all, and he even managed to escape. Well, the Dalki are a bigger problem right now. It seems he's been gone for a while and hasn't done anything. Perhaps he is planning to stay out of this war. Glancing at Layla and then at Borden, Logan finally made a choice. For now, they would head to Graham's lab. He was still unsure what they would do with the demon tier beast, and it might take a lot of time to defeat it anyway. In the meantime, Logan wanted to see if he could do anything for little Borden. The group rushed, following Logan, but he didn't say anything. This was the choice he had made. Eventually, they reached the lab and for once, came across another pair of guards. The pair stood firmly in front of the lab, and it didn't look like they could be distracted just with some noise, unlike the previous ones. They're both 3-spike Dalki. I won't be able to take them out without making some noise. Borden, if you used your injection and turned into a 4-spike, do you think you can beat them up quickly? Logan asked. Borden thought about it for a while. A 4-spike strength was far greater than a 3-spike, but to defeat the enemy without making noise was a big concern. Hey, Layla called out. I can do it. It didn't cross Logan's mind to ask Layla. Because even though she had defeated the Dalki Helen, everything he had noticed about her seemed odd. Layla, I know what Peter said might have annoyed you, but it's too risky, Linda replied. Logan looked at what was in Layla's hand. She was already holding the black sword by her side rather than the bow. Logan wondered since when did she start using this weapon. If you are sure you can do this, then go for it. Anyway, I don't think you would say anything if you didn't feel confident. Logan answered. Nodding her head, Layla soon changed to her second form. She grew slighter taller, and the horns on her head ported the most when she was in this form. Still, other than the fourth form, this was when she was at her fastest and had abilities more like that of a vampire, but the most noticeable thing was the flickering sword marking, pulsing like a heartbeat. Layla squinted as she tried to ignore all the cries that went off in her head, and in the next second, she ran out. Her eyes had barely opened, but before the Dalki could even notice, her sword had already moved and sliced through the pair's necks, killing them on the spot. The others, witnessing this, were speechless. Wow, maybe she should have joined the competition after all. Borden smiled, but they suddenly saw Layla collapsing on the ground, right in front of the lab door. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1544 Getting an Upgrade. The group outside in front of the large black tower didn't panic as they faced the Dalki. It looked like Logan's reading device was working correctly after all, since there were around the same number of 3 to 4 spiked Dalki that were at the other fortresses so far. However, with the team, which consisted of many of the cursed strongest, it was proving to be very little trouble. It was strange, never in their life would they think they would feel this way when fighting against the Dalki, treating it as some sort of competition. Borden was able to fly up high and slash out wind attacks from above, and then when needed, he would swoop down with his steel wings, dealing fatal blows to the enemy. Some Dalki even attempted to jump and latch onto him, but his clawed-like feet were deathly strong and sharp. If he managed to get a grip of any Dalki, they would find it near impossible to break free, not unless they wanted to kill the beast. After obtaining the crystals the vampires had kept, Borden had used those crystals to evolve himself into a demon-tier beast just like Rattan. His speed was deadly when he flew in a straight path using his wings. His wind powers were just as strong as a high-level wind ability user, and his body was just as strong as the Dalki he was facing. At the same time, another demon-tier beast was causing a rampage, having created several sharp blades. Rattan's strange mud-like substance also slowed down his opponent somewhat. Then calmly walking on the ground, he would slice his enemies as if they were standing still. Fex, who was down below, couldn't quite believe it. It was clear that demon-tier beasts were always a bigger worry than the Dalki. However, they never tried to take over Earth, and the beasts didn't fight as a group. If two demon-tier beasts found each other in the same territory, they would attempt to take each other out. It was something built into their nature. Man, if the humans ever had to go up against an army of demon-tiers, that would be troubling. Fex thought while standing at the back, with his hands by his side, not taking part in the battle. This was not because he didn't want to join and help, rather, it was just that there really was no reason for him to join. Even Nate, who Fex always saw as someone below him, was doing fairly well due to the demon-tier shield he still had in his hand. Blocking hits left and right and blasting the Dalki away with twice the counterpower was sure to finish off nearly any of them. Nate could also utilize it well since he could punch the shield himself to give it a blast of power here and there. The only problem with that was the power range coming from the shield. Finally, there then was Syl, the one who, as expected, was performing the best among all of them. It was strange, but all Syl had been doing so far was picking up rocks from the ground and throwing them at the enemy. At times the force would be so strong that it would break before reaching its target. Thankfully, Syl could use plenty of materials on the Dalki planet that withstood his throwing power, but each one that hit the Dalki pierced right through their body. If it hit the head or the heart area, the Dalki would die on the spot, as if a bullet went through them. It was hard to tell whether this was a strength ability or something else, but Syl seemed very focused on his attacks. In the tower itself, more Dalki were rushing down going towards the humans, but even they could see that what was currently going on was a slaughter fest. One of Jim's clones was also taking a peek out of the window inside the room. Two beasts, humans, vampires. It feels like everyone is going up against the Dalki. I guess Graham underestimated them after all. Jim said, "What do we do?" Another Dalki asked. It was a four-spike whom Graham had left in charge in his absence. We can't get in touch with Graham at the moment either. Something is jamming our devices. So it looks like a great mind is here as well. The clone thought. I have a suggestion. It's up to you whether you follow it or not, but if you choose not to, there's a good chance that all of us will die. Jim's clone smiled, thinking perhaps it could use this situation to his advantage. Over in front of what the others believed to be Graham's lab, Layla had just collapsed. Immediately, the group rushed over, but it looked like she was still conscious. The first thing Linda did was lift her and place her on her back. Then, she and Borden quickly moved the Dalki inside the lab while shutting the doors behind them. I'm okay, Linda. You can put me down, it's just a minor headache, that's all. Layla replied. I think it would be best that you don't use that sword too much if that's the drawback of using it. There are other ways we can deal with the Dalki. Logan said, but he wasn't looking at them. Instead, he looked out towards the lab and was surprised at what he could see. There were large glass containers filled with liquid and more, however that wasn't the surprising thing. All of the servers and other devices were smashed and destroyed. Why would he destroy his own lab and leave it like this? Linda asked. Seeing it, Logan could only laugh. It seems like he somewhat expected us to get this far and wanted to keep the information. Maybe, the old me would have been devastated to see this, but just hitting on these machines wouldn't stop me from extracting any information at all. That Dalki doesn't know who I am. Placing his hand on the ground, Logan activated his soul weapon. Because of the information he had gathered before from the other server room, he knew the details of just what terminals were in this place and other necessary things. It was also all based on things he had seen upon getting information from Richard. It looked like a lot of what Jim, Graham and Richard knew was most likely the same thing. Because of this, Logan could rebuild the entire room with his soul weapon. He broke down the machinery into finer, smaller spiders and began to restructure it again. His skill wasn't like healing or reversing time, he was just fixing things and putting it back together. This was why when everything was complete, it was as if no one ever destroyed it in the first place. There might be some corrupted data here and there, but I think I'll manage. Logan smiled, placing his hand on the terminals and trying to uncover whatever he could. The information was soon downloaded into his head. Now he was getting information on experiments that Graham had done so far, including about the humanoid beasts he had created. The layout of this base showed that this place was linked to the demon tier beast on the other side. Finally, after he downloaded everything, Logan had finished his work in this lab. The Dalki are searching for a way to get the ability to reproduce and live a long life. I now have all the information they want. Logan smiled. Which means Borden, it's time for an upgrade. Hurry up. Hop into the glass container. It will take a long time to build a lab like this anywhere else. So, this is currently our best shot. Borden didn't know what was happening but had trusted Logan before and would trust him now. A strange claw-like device came and picked up Borden, placing him in the glass container. Logan then turned it on, and the upgraded process would soon begin. How long is this going to take? Linda asked. I'm not sure, perhaps an hour or so. Once Layla has recovered, I was going to tell you to look after this room. With what's happening outside, I doubt anyone would come in here while Layla and I go and check up on the demon tier beast. Logan explained. Layla was still a bit dizzy, but she was recovering very fast, so they should be able to move out soon. Logan didn't tell them that he had found out something dire while going through the information in Graham's lab. The vampire settlement was in serious trouble, and he knew why Graham was so confident now. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1545 Everyone died. The group outside the Black Tower were doing very well in dealing with the Dalki. Still, even though this was the case, a thought flashed through Fex's mind as he watched everything. If I remember correctly, Logan said that the energy reading from this place was the same as the other places. Fex thought. Yet so far, it appears that they are weaker than the other forces we have faced before. Which means that there should still be a humanoid Dalki. The battlefield was starting to get quiet as the number of enemies rushing out of the tower had lowered considerably. The dead bodies of the Dalki had piled up around the area, and the boys had ended their competition long ago. The main reason was that there was already a clear winner among them all. Sil. Even though he didn't get directly involved much in the battle, but some time ago, he found a hard large rock-like substance not too far away, which he smashed with his bare fists, creating several smaller rocks for him to use, and throwing them, he dealt with the Dalki as soon as the latter stepped out of the tower. This is a bit unfair, Ratton complained. Sil had killed some of those that were stuck in my mud. As I contributed somewhat, I'm sure that should count as a half a point for me. The next second, Vorden had landed right by Ratton's side, who had somewhat stopped fighting as well. I didn't expect you to be such a whining loser. Anyway, it's fine, it's a good thing that none of us was badly hurt in the first place. Surprisingly, there was someone else too, who hadn't fought much, and that was Peter. Instead, he was busy walking through the battlefield, looking at all the Dalki that had been killed so far. All of these guys are useless. Peter shouted, kicking one of the Dalki's bodies so hard it went flying off in the distance. If Sil can kill them with a rock, then that means a 5 spike or more would be able to beat them. You would think that at their base, they would have something worth fighting. It was at that moment, at the very top of the shelter, a large object crashed out from the top. Parts of the tower began to fall, and the group quickly regathered themselves. They were in the crater, and the object that had landed in front of them was around 10 meters away. It looked like an uneven ball of a black mass as big as a van. Upon careful observation, they noticed it moved slightly, and along its back, 5 spikes slowly protruded out. Slowly breaking out of the strange ball, a large Dalki stood straight. Its forearms, shoulders and legs were twice the thickness of a regular Dalki. That doesn't look like a regular Dalki, Vex noted, which was obvious to all of them. The Dalki itself was far broader, and its body structure was different in every way. It looked like a Dalki covered in thick armor that was 2 sizes too large for itself. The only thing was it wasn't armored, they were just the scales of its body. This doesn't look like a humanoid Dalki, Borden said. Which means it's a regular 5 spike. Hearing this, Peter just smiled because it was precisely what he was looking for. Syl threw a stone from his hands towards the Dalki's chest like he had done on many others. It was fast and hit it perfectly, only to get crushed into pieces upon impact and not even making the Dalki flinch, much less force him back. This is what we needed. Last time, Slicer was too much for us, we needed the help of the other blades and Quinn. This time, we have to show that we are strong enough to take out a 5 spike on our own. Syl said. The others were inclined to agree, ready for a fight. Meanwhile, on the other side, before heading off to the demon beast's location, Logan decided to inform Sam of what he had found out in Graham's lab. We are still making our way to the settlement now. All of the leaders are there, but if what you say is true, even with us arriving, it still won't be enough. Although, I just checked the energy reading, and your worst-case scenario has yet to arrive. Sam replied, for now, continue with the current plan. If the energy readings change, I will let you know. Still, there was a considerable worry in Logan's mind. The only good thing was that they had their portable teleporter they could use, but Logan had created a wide-range jammer for all teleporters so that the Dalki also couldn't suddenly appear here for backup. Before they used the portable teleporter, they would have to finish their job here to head to the Daisy faction. Although they could go to the other battlefield once they finished their mission here, the question was, would they even be in the condition to fight? There are multiple options. Killing the dragon will force it to go to its other half, which is currently in Quinn's shadow space, making it whole again. If that's the case, then there is a high chance it will wake up. But who knows how long that process will take. And whether or not the dragon will go on a rampage is a different thing. We could stay here and protect the demon tier dragon until the battle is over, but others will most likely need our help. For now, they needed more information, and because of that, Logan and Layla were heading to the other side of the lab, where Graham had held the demon tier beast. While walking through the lab, Layla and Logan noticed fewer workers around the place. Even Logan's spiders were unable to pick up anyone. The others must be doing an outstanding job. Logan thought. We might have to fight the demon tier beast, right? It was already in a weakened state from the fight on Blade Island, and now most of its energy is drained, so it should be at its weakest. Layla mentioned and no longer held the sword in her hand, but it was still by her side at all times. Yes, correct. However, remember that the demon tier beast is still a demon tier beast. We always were taught that the humanoid demon tiers were the strongest, but from what we have learned, we know that this dragon is an exception to the rule. I'm just hoping that we can find a way where we won't have to have a direct confrontation with it. Logan replied. As they got closer and closer to the other part of the lab, Logan noticed something from his spiders. The room where the demon tier beast was held, was already open. So far, every room they had come across was securely shut by the Dalki, and this one should have been, but to their shock, it was open. It meant only one thing, someone had opened the gate and could be inside the room. We have to hurry. Logan shouted, running forward, worried about what was about to happen. Based on what his spiders were showing him, he recalled all of them to himself. The remarkable part of his suit was that it would break down when releasing the spiders. "What's wrong? What did you see?" Layla asked. "Get ready to fight, we have to stop them," Logan shouted. The door was up ahead, and they knew immediately they were in the right room. Upon reaching it they could see a giant rectangle container that held the dragon in place. Countless large machines were injected into the dragon, keeping it in a strange sedated state while continuously draining its energy. Seeing the dragon once again was a reminder of how fierce it was, and what frightened Layla most was that its eye was open, staring towards them. "Layla, stop them!" Logan shouted. On one side of the container, besides the control panel, was one of the gym clones and 2 Dalki. Too late. "If we are going to die anyway, why don't we all die together?" Jim said, smashing down on one of the buttons, and soon all the strange machines linked to the dragon began to come off one by one. Thanks for watching and subscribe my channel.